Service announcement brought to you by the Blue Moon Guys. We accept full responsibility for lack of self-control during the show and encourage you to let out your crazy, sit back, relax, and let the insanity begin.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Who is that, Verizon? Can you hear me now? I had the wrong setting for my microphone. Let me know if you can hear me. It's showing on my, yeah, there we go. We get a little Barry White here. All right, so anyway, let me repeat. Cam went fishing with his buddy next door. He asked him to go fishing with him, so they went out last night. I hope he had a good time. I haven't heard back from him, and he's going to try to pop in here as soon as he gets home. So it's 6. Sorry about that, Elvis and friends. It's what is it? 5. It's 6 hours. It's 10:00 p.m. for him. So anyway, so I'm on right now, and hopefully Cam will join us. But we got a lot to cover. A lot's happened this week. I got a lot of stuff put together. And what do we got here? We got 14 people with us. Who we got? We got Susan. Hello, Susan. Hello, Johan. Hello. Good to see you. Lori. Hello. A lot of you were with us on the inside the studio. So had a couple of really good songs. I'm still humming "It's Your Baby, You Rock It." Still got that going through my head. All right. So, oh, hey, Alvin. See you here too. So what I'd like to do, since we're obviously going to be discussing the new book by Peter Guralnick. I'm going to do a little poll here just to kind of let me know where we stand. So if everybody can just at least put in, let me get down here to this one, put in your answer. And what you're going to do is you're going to say hashtag yes if you've read the book, hashtag no if you haven't read the book. So that'll kind of let me know, how much I'm going to get into it. I've read the book. Well, I can say 2 times. The first time I read it just straight through normal, and I'm sorry, I read it through at. I play the audiobook with the book, so it follows the words and all that, makes it easier. So I pump up the speed a little bit because I can comprehend it better. And then the second time I went back, I reread the narrative, the first part. And I did a lot of highlighting. I've got a lot of highlighting here. And then there were 2 interviews that Peter Guralnick did. A lot of you saw the ones with something about the worm in your ear, the 2 English guys that had a conversation with Peter, that he said a lot of things in and just kind of like, huh? And then there was another one. It's a podcast called The Naked Lunch. And so I listened to that. And what I did is I took both of them, and I'm not going to show the videos, but what I did is I transcribed them and put them down to PDFs and went through and highlighted what they said at certain parts. Instead of sitting here trying to listen to forward back, I highlighted a lot of things. And I found a couple of discrepancies upon what, they're not major stuff, but it makes you think. A couple of discrepancies between what he said in the interview and then what's said in the book And, it touches on a lot of the things that we always discuss about Elvis. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to kind of tell you my basic conclusion about the book. This book is Colonel's side of the story. That's how I view it right now. I view it as it's his side of the story. It's his autobiography. He wrote it. It's all about him. It's not about Aunt Margaret. And mostly about him and his relationship with Elvis. But it's from his point of view. That's how I've taken it. So I've got a devil's advocate, a few things on like a devil's advocate about it. Now, I've watched some other interviews too. Some reviews about the book from a few other pages. And I would say basically overall, their comments are not far off from what I kind of come to a conclusion about, except for one thing. And I want you all to tell me what you think. I approached this book with an open mind. I didn't approach it saying, "Ooh, I hope there's some salacious stuff about Parker," or I didn't approach it and saying, "Oh, I hope they just, I just hope they clear his name up and all." I didn't approach it that way, and I never do when I read a book. I think all of you who've been in the chats with me for a while know that I'm a very open-minded person. I do have my viewpoints about things, and if I'm wrong, I'll let I'll admit it. I'm wrong if somebody is able to point me in the right direction. I have some, and we're going to go over all this, but I just want to kind of give you a kind of an overview of what I want to discuss. The reason why I canceled the book chat this morning is because I didn't want to be worn out, tired by the time we got to this one. And so I thought it'd be better. And, all week long, I don't want to say I'm fretting, but there were a couple of times that I got a little emotional about getting into discussion about this book because you all know how I feel about this channel and how I feel about you guys. So the one thing I do want to say is I want to keep this conversation, this chat, focused as much as possible on the book. And I want everybody, and I don't even have to say this, but let's be civil, let's share our opinions. And I never have to say let's be civil with you guys. It's ridiculous for me to even say that. I apologize for doing that. But I want to kind of keep this focused in the direction of this book. Because to be honest with you, we're not going to be able to cover a lot of the stuff that I found and that I'm still finding all in one chat, even if we go 6, 7, 8 hours. So I look at this book as a reference book. I don't look at it as a narrative overall novel like Careless Love and Last Train to Memphis. I look at it as a reference because it's broke down. Let's do this. Oh, let's see. We got 8 people. Nobody's read the book yet. Has everybody put in their votes? Put in pound yes if you've read it. Put in pound no if you haven't. And I'm just going to keep this running for a little bit. Let me catch up on some comments here. I try not to get behind. I'm hoping Cam will be able to pop in, but I told him yesterday he was all fretting that he was letting me down and everything. That I'm sure. And I told him, dude, he doesn't get out and do stuff like this. And I said, do it. Take advantage of it. I mean, I'm a big boy and I'll be able to handle it. And if anybody wants to pop in with me on the screen, you're more than happy to. I'll give you the link. You can pop in and fill his little square for a little bit and we'll chat. We can kind of, share that when we start getting into the discussion. So, okay, well, it looks like we're going to keep it right around 8. Okay, so yeah, Olga voted. It probably needs to rehash. So, hey, Ed, welcome. Driving, so can't read or respond to chat. All right, well, I'm glad you're listening, and I need to email you. I'm hoping we can have fun one Sunday. Talk about your Elvis. experiences. Hey, I have the feeling that C. believes that he made Elvis, that Elvis wouldn't have made without him. What do you think? I'm going to answer all these questions. Listen to some of the audiobooks. So kind of, I guess you can put a, yes. Elvis, can you please tell me how you transcribe stuff? Go to Descript. Descript. It's a AI channel. You just upload the MP3 file and it transcribes the whole thing for you. Then you got to kind of go through and tweak some of the words and all that. But it's great. It's really cool. So that's here. I'll type it in here. Actually, you know what? I'll send you the link right now. I use it a lot for transcribing, and it really helps out. Descript. Where's the Descript? All right, Elvis and friend, here's the link for you. Susan. Okay, so I sat and I've really tried to figure which way we want to go. I don't really think, and you guys tell me, because this is your forum, and I want you to tell me, do we really need to go through his growing up years? I think we've covered that a lot in our chats. There are some things that are a little bit different and all that, but it's basically, it really explains. I do get a better understanding of how he actually finally arrived here in the States, and it wasn't so secretive. I mean, he came in regular off of a liner. The second he came 3 times, went back twice, was sent back by the United States the second time, but the third time he wrote because he knew his uncle or somebody owned or worked at the liner company, and they were able to let him get on there, and he worked for his way to get across the ocean. But anyway, I think we don't talk much about that. We can bring that up every now and then, but I want to talk about, these are the topics that I really want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk about the movies. I want to talk about 68 Special. I want to talk about world touring. I want to talk about addictions. Both of them had addictions. And I want to talk about the things that Parker wrote about. In these letters are so confusing the first time you go through them, but they are in chronological order. So that really helps out a lot. And I went through and highlighted the dates. But there's one I can't find it. I searched it, but I know it's in there because I read it, and they brought it up in one of the interviews I listened to. There's one letter or a writing where he it's almost like a little small autobiography of himself and his feelings for Elvis. And you read all these letters, and when you come to the conclusion, if you take them all for fact, I mean, and I've said this before, I think Elvis really did care about Colonel Parker really cared about Elvis. I really do. I really think he did. And these letters kind of show that. But we're going to talk about the things that kind of inhibited that relationship, which we know most of them are. So those are the topics that I want to talk about. Haven't seen Guralnick on mainstream TV talk shows yet. Perhaps he's waiting until after EW. I don't know if he's been on any TV shows. I just happened to catch that podcast this morning from Naked Lunch. So let me get I guess the first thing I want to talk about, let me just pull up the transcripts that I've got. I'm going to open up the book here. This is really, I really thought about, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I want to open up. I want to open up this right here, the Colonel and the King. And I'm just going to go through the things that I highlight, and we'll talk just like we do in my normal books. Let me size this down so it's not so big on the screen. I'll carry that down. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to share this with y'all. Window. The Colonel and the King. These are highlights from the book that I read. I think I probably should take this over to the video stream. Nope. I guess not. We'll just keep it there. Okay, so everybody's pretty. I'm going to close that poll out. I think we're pretty much know that not a whole lot. All right, so I'm going to add this to the scene. So, you guys don't have to see me. Let me crop this so I can get it to where you guys see it, and then I'm just going to highlight what I want you all. So as I scroll, it'll scroll on the screen for you. So to start off, just some of the highlights about when he signed. He gave up. The book really brings out about how he gave up Eddie Arnold. He walked away from a very lucrative contract with Eddie Arnold, and he was known. I learned a lot about how famous he was as a manager. Had a great relationship with RCA. So this kind of these are for future discussions, but let's see. I want to get to. Let's go backwards. I'm sorry, guys. I've done everything to figure out. There's so much shit to talk about here. Actually, I want to get to the part. Let's go to. I should have highlighted these. So on the sale of the royalties for RCA Records, Guralnick on one of the interviews had said that it was Elvis really wanting to sell it. I mean, to get the money. He needed the money. And we know he needed the money. This is right after Aloha. He was getting ready to get divorced. And I need to keep these. Let me move this over here because I'm going to lose the comments. I hope he can make it in here. Patricia, hello. I don't think you're right. Gladys never trusted Parker. Never did. And I don't think that relationship with Parker would have lasted. So RCA, according to this, was the one who approached. It wasn't Elvis, according to this book, was Guralnick and through the letters. RCA approached Parker and about buying the royalties. And it started off at $3 million, wound up at $5 million. And I'm just kind of highlighting some contradictions I find. Elvis and Vernon, on the hand, were all for it. Colonel didn't want to do it. I'm reading from the book. But Elvis and Vernon did. They knew they needed money. They were desperate for money. Vernon outlined to the Colonel the mountain of debt that they were facing. He was afraid at some point they might actually lose Graceland. In addition to that, with all Elvis's spending, and that's one of the points they really bring out in this book, is that Elvis and the Colonel really didn't care about money. They just, when they needed money, they'd find a way to get it, and he was spending. And we all know Elvis had. It's hard to say whether this was the convincing army, but it didn't really matter because Colonel was sure at this point that there was no way of persuading Elvis and Vernon that they wanted so badly was not to their long-term benefit. So he entered into talks with Mel Eberman and RCA, professing great reluctance, but also sensing an exceptional opportunity. So they offered a buyout of $3 million for all the royalties of the songs. They already owned the masters. In an interesting surprise, RCA president, whose flair for the dramatic had led them to embrace the Aloha satellite broadcast concept from the start. So they went into that, and he discussed with him about the $3 million, and Parker said $3 million wasn't enough. They needed to get it to $5 million. So in the book here, it says that Elvis and Vernon were the ones that approached. Parker didn't want to do it. And this is based upon whatever information that he had. Now, I'm going to be jumping around here. I really tried to highlight this stuff. If you listen to the interview with him and the two English guys, trying to find the part where it says, all right, so in the interview, and I could put anybody that wants, there's no sense of me trying to search this. Contradiction I found is in the interview that Guralnick had said that RCA approached them about the contract, and or Elvis and Vernon approached them, but yet in the book it's RCA that approached him about it, and Colonel didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. So I'm finding contradictions like that. There's a contradiction about the 68 special, where he says that everything that they did was planned. It was the way it was. There were no contradictions, nothing. So here's my comment to that, and I want y'all to tell me what you think. Why would Steve Bender, Jerry Schilling, everybody that was involved in the manufacturing or the production of 68 Special, why would they lie and say that Colonel was nothing but problems in that? These are just thoughts I'm putting out. Why would he lie about that? Why would they lie about it? And so Guralnick's putting it in here as he's telling. Guralnick did say, I'm telling Colonel's side of the story. He's not saying that everything in there is actually factual. It's not golden. He just said, this is Colonel's story. All through the letters, all through that he wrote to everybody. Elvis, he's got every freaking letter in there practically. Well, no, there's a bunch more, but these are the highlighted ones. And, after reading this and listening to the interviews, I find it really hard to believe that with all these things that came out in this interview that totally changed everything we've believed in about Elvis was wrong. The touring, the movies, the 68 special, all of that. Can we be wrong? What do you guys think? Can we be wrong? I don't think so. You gotta, when you tell a lie, the lie changes over a period of time. Bender's story always stayed true about the trial, about the show being completely Christmas. Well, according to what Guralnick's saying in this, that it was a Christmas show, but it wasn't a Christmas show in the aspect of all being Christmas. That's what he was saying. And that there was no bitter fighting between each other. And then the scene, how they did the kind of the unplugged scene, where that came up at the last minute because you remember the scene in the movie. I know the movie's kind of exaggerating all that. But we know, I've read the story before, and it's in Bender's book, and it's in some of the interviews that he came by. They were all jamming, and that's when he said, this would be a great scene. They'd already had the boxing arena already set up. So this would be a great scene for you guys to come out and do this. So was it already planned that way? Like Guralnick says, in the book says? You got Elvis lying, you got Bender lying, you got Bones Howe lying, you got all of those that were involved in that production lying. The stories from Schilling and everybody that was there. Let me catch this one. Yeah, Susan, Steve Bender can't be wrong. His career was on the line, and his future work in the industry would suffer if he was lying. Now, I do want to say one thing. I still like this is a fascinating book. I mean, absolutely fascinating. I can't, I've always had problems lately in the last several years. I've had a problem being able to stay awake while reading and I have to come back. I didn't have this problem with this book. It was so engrossed, and being able to, if you can do it, it's the best way to really go through a book. But it's almost like a reference. I think, okay, I want to go back to this, and you can go back to it. That's why I'm I'm going to go ahead and get the hardback. I mean the printed copy, because I can just grab it and go to sections. So it's a fascinating book. But here I'm going to throw devil's advocate out about this book. And everything being the story and the facts all being relied upon what Loanne told him, Colonel's widow, and what the Colonel wrote in all these letters. Remember, he's the snowman. And he knows after Elvis died, and he's going through all these problems, and he knows that his reputation is, not good. And who's to say that Parker, who probably still owned the original typewriter he had Tom Diskin still around. Who's to say that he didn't manufacture some documents and put them away? I mean, it would be simple to do, especially at that time. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate, because this is Parker's story coming from Parker. And all Guralnick is doing is he's just relaying the information about it. So on the 68 special, I don't believe that it was scripted, how it came out. Val, I would believe the general opinions about Parker. Parker's reputation was in the toilet. Parker's widow isn't going to throw her husband under the bus. She adored that man. And now here's another thing I'm going to say. I think Parker really, I think he really loved his wife. He loved Elvis. And I don't think, if Parker did do that, I don't think Loanne was in on it. It would have been, Parker could have easily done it and just said, file this away or whatever. And if she did, then, she's going to do what any wife who adored her husband is going to do to protect his image and his reputation. And she's going to tell the stories. But I believe Bender's story. I don't care what's written in the book. I don't care what's said. I believe Bender's story is the way it went. Now, movies. Let me catch up. I'm not really watching the chats here. So where are we at? We got. Add this here. No, I don't know. I haven't seen him on mainstream. I know he's going to be down there at Elvis Week next week. Referring to you saying we could pop on. Referring to you to saying we could. Yeah, anybody that wants to pop in and be on screen, or you could just do it by audio. You can call in if you want. The number's right up above, right there. If you want to call in, to have talk about whatever we're talking about at the time. But let me get back to the comments. From the polls, the book isn't selling. Really? I haven't looked. I haven't looked to see if it's been selling. Last week when that interview came out, I know a lot of y'all were really upset about it, or it kind of went different ways with everybody on the interview. And I didn't listen to it on purpose for a little while, and then I listened to it, and I was floored by what Guralnick had to say. And I thought, well, let's go ahead and do a quick book chat, and taking the advice of a few of you that we should not do it, and I went ahead and deleted. I thought I need to soak this in, and I need some rest. We're doing a lot, and so I figured, well, Cam and I is going to record inside the studio, and the rest of the week I'm just going to soak all this in, watch the interviews, and get my, because if I'd done it then, it would have been, I don't know. Let me look. Now I've got an overall opinion. I'm going to read the book some more and have more stuff to say, and I may change my opinion on a few things. But I do love the way Guralnick wrote it, and I'm going to defend Guralnick in one aspect, and I could 100% be wrong, because he did say a few times that he still stands by what he wrote in Careless Love, which some things in there are not, are opposite of what was said in the book, in the new book. So I think he's still, based on the conversations, I think he's saying this is Colonel Parker's story. Here it is. And even if he didn't come back and fudge everything, he may have just been doing it all along. Remember that Guralnick sat there for years and saved every receipt. I don't know if he manufactured some or what, but saved receipts, saved documents, saved things, so that if Elvis ever did come to him and say, it's over, it's done. And, they depicted that in the movie, and I'd read it in books too. I think it was in one of the Careless Love, maybe. I'm not for sure. I can't remember now. I've read so many. He had it as forethought to look that far in advance. And it could have been a year, it could have been 5 years, it could have been 10 years, but he was saving those receipts for years. And that's, when it came that time, they depicted in the movie where it's not I'm sure it's not an accurate depiction as far as where it all happened. Because one movie you see it happened in the office, and there anyway. So what would be, would it be incredulous to believe that he did the same thing with all the letters? Writing all these letters all these years just to show who he was, or let everybody be, just to protect his reputation. And they could have been written at those times, because there's thousands of them from what I understand. What do y'all think? I need to catch up. I'm talking to, I need Cam here. Okay, so Guralnick will probably be doing lots more YouTube interviews this coming week. Yeah, I think so too. Barker was quite clever, and he could manipulate people. Absolutely. And that's talked about in the book too. If I'm in the U.S., it shouldn't cost any extra, right? Okay. Do you want to call, or do you want to come on screen? Let me know. One of the two, because if you come on screen, all you got to do, I'll just give you a link and you link right in. You got to have a good connection and no firewall. But if you want to call, you need to call through WhatsApp, and there'll be no charge. In interviews we've seen on Rick's show, she goes on and on about Parker being the good guy. Are we talking about Priscilla? Yeah, it's true. Oh, Luann, she was kind of flaky, yeah, but I think she was a not. One of the very first watch party we did was the TCB gang, and she was in on there, and she was, from 1971 on, she was part of Elvis's machine. She handled, I guess, the administrative for tours and things like that. And I don't strike her as being manipulative herself. I think she was manipulated, or just decided, she'll only talk positive and she won't bring out any negative. My understanding was that Boz Lerman took some poetic license with the 68 special. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Colonel gave Bender a hard time, but I don't think they had planned alternative scenes. I think what changed was less. They only did one Christmas song. They wanted to end on Only Believe or something like that. Kind of a spiritual Christmas type song. And have a little bit more Christmas because, they bring it up and it's been brought up times before. When you do a Christmas special like that, you can replay it every year. You can modify it, whatever. You can do it every year, which you really could do the same thing with a 68 special. But anyway, I go with Steve Bender. He was the producer there. I know that Parker was there the whole time, and I know that that the way Boz portrayed Parker in that movie was almost like a little bit of an obsessive manipulator. Excuse me. That mic is so strong. I can hear myself breathing. Bingo, Rick. If it was all wrong, wouldn't take 30 years for it to come out. Yeah, I would believe the general. Yeah, Susan, I was saying that for a second. It wouldn't. No, I mean, why would it take that long for any of that to come out? It's coming out now when basically there's nobody here to defend themselves or to say, yeah, that's the way it happened. The last few years, Jerry Schilling wasn't even there with Elvis, but he was with Elvis the longest than anybody else. He was connected with Elvis. Well, maybe Red West. Well, no, Red West. Well, Schilling left. So anyway, bingo. I wouldn't believe the general opinions. I would believe the general opinions about Parker. Now, I will say this. I have a little bit of a better opinion about Parker as far as his work ethic and his determination to make it work with Elvis. But one of the things that I've always said kind of comes to fruition in this book, and that's that he got to a point where he didn't know what to do. And then he got in, as things started getting tough and money started coming out, then he got into his addiction with gambling. He played around with it before, but it was never an addiction. And the book brings out by a lot of people that all that addiction started, towards about the same time that Elvis started getting a little bit more into medication, drugs, and things like that. But on the 68 special, I think I've said my piece. Let me check everybody here, see if there's anybody else got something to say. I'm all over the freaking place. So why wouldn't Parker let Elvis know Bender was calling him? I'm not for sure which part you're talking about, Susan. I don't either. And Bender has told his story countless times in interviews. In a great book, and there were other books written by a few people that were involved there that basically says the same thing. The whole story about If I Can Dream and how Elvis would, if Elvis was all into this and had the script and everything, and then all of us, he was, of course, this is probably accurate no matter what. He was just scared shitless to go out there because it had been so long. But 68 Special to me is I believe the way Bender told it, and that's just my opinion. So, hey, Helen, yeah, see, Bender wouldn't, and see, that's the thing about, and that's another reason why I kind of defend Guralnick on this book, and it's saying, there's a lot of reviews I read where people come out of it saying, "Oh, Guralnick sold him out," and he's favoring Parker and all that. And they approached the book with I hope it's bad or I hope it's good. And I said this at the beginning. I approached it where I just want to read it and find out what they got to say, and I'll make my opinion from there. But my conclusion at the end of reading this book is this is Guralnick taking all of Colonel Parker's writings, all his letters, all of his documents. That's his autobiography. And Guralnick's putting it out there. And you make the decision whether you want to believe it or not. I personally think there's a bit of a snow job there from Parker. And I don't think he did it in the last 10 years saying, "Oh, I got to cover myself." All this stuff, Elvis is gone, and people are blaming me for this. I think he was just. I think from the very beginning, the guy was an intelligent man. He didn't get past fourth grade, but that doesn't mean a thing. He was intelligent. You got to give him credit. This guy was really smart, and he spent his life covering his own ass on things and making sure that he was protected and his client was protected. And that's brought up a lot in this book. And I'm going to address. I have a different opinion now of the movie deal, the whole situation with the movies. I went back to reread the whole scenario of Star is Born, and I need to reread it. I think we're going to do one more chat on this maybe next week when I go over and I want to pinpoint a few more things. I may have a few changes on my opinion, but the Bender, the 68 special, I just think that I think what we've been told is the correct way, and that it just wasn't. That's the way everything was written. It was written to be that way. I don't take that. Let me get back down to the new one. He was a carny. He was a con man. But I don't think he conned. I don't think he conned Elvis. I think he manipulated him, and that some people may think that's conning him, but I don't think he manipulated him the way that people want to say that he did. So anybody else got some comments on the 68 special? Call in or leave your comments. Tracy, the statements he made regarding Elvis's medication use infuriated me. This will damage Elvis' legacy immensely. Interesting that this book didn't come out when Lisa was alive. I kind of, the medication and all that, was talking about it. That's all, to me, that's been talked about a lot. It wasn't like, to me, it didn't come out like, oh, wow, he used medication. And we know that towards the end, he did use a lot and everything. And Guralnick talks about how it affected some of the things that was happening. It was the last several years where it just started affecting performances. It was affecting not going on tour, things like that. He did talk a lot about it. He talked about it, as far as, having to carry it with him if he went on tour. But anyway, 68 special. Good. Well, interesting.
Hey!
My God, look who's on board. All right, my brother from another mother. Let me get this thing off of here. I can find it. Oh, it's right there. Look at there. Say hey. You did, didn't you?
Whose
So we
ass
have
I
Sam in
gotta
the house.
whose ass I gotta bust? You guys been here 40 minutes without even telling me.
I told you we were starting at 4 yesterday.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. And then you came back and you said, "I'll be back there in time."
No, you said you were thinking about starting at 4, but you hadn't decided yet.
You don't read any of the notifications that come out that I send on all the channels and all the WhatsApp and on the. I send.
I didn't get nothing on WhatsApp.
Okay.
But in any case,
All
I'm
right.
here now.
Well, you want okay? Well, you want to fire me? I'll go. You can take it over.
No.
All right.
No, not if you consider fish that size fish.
Is that how big you got?
Yeah, we use them for bait.
Did you catch anything with a bait?
No.
All right. Everybody's saying hi. So what we've done is I'm just kind of recapping the book. I've got the out, I've highlighted a bunch of stuff. The couple of interviews I took and transcribed them. So I've got those, but these are the topics I'm talking about with the book right now. And we just got through talking about the 68 special. I'll let you put in your thoughts. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the movies. We're going to talk about the touring, and a few other things that always are always the topics of, why did Parker do this? Why did Parker do that? And I'm going to talk about what was brought out in the book, and then I'm going to just say, my opinion about things. And I just got through saying that I don't. This book it's basically out of the mouth of Parker. It's not Guralnick that's right. It's not his thoughts, and it's him taking everything that Parker had and from all that archive and writing this reference book basically.
Yeah, he's just relaying what he found in the documents.
Yeah, and so anyways, we basically I think we got a pretty good consensus here that the 68 special happened the way we believe it happened, like Bender says, and not in the way that it's sold in the book that Parker relayed. And that we feel not I feel not so much that he didn't manufacture documents later. I think he just did all that planning, just always sending letters that showed him to be this person and that person, so that down the line it was already there. Just like with the
Stayed,
receipts and all that stuff he did with Elvis when Elvis was going to fire him. He said, "Well, you owe me whatever, 2 million or whatever." And
stayed
I
one
think
foot
what he
ahead.
was doing was he was writing letters all those years to people and saying, this, and I love, this is what I want to do about all this stuff. And I think he was doing his snow job from day one,
Mm.
and he wasn't
No,
doing it against Elvis. He was doing it to protect himself against the stories that the fans out there. Elvis knew the truth about everything.
mm. And he also knew the public perception of himself. So I mean, he knew that from pretty early on. So yeah, he could have easily done that just as a kind of a keep the keep the round in the barrel kind of thing in case I need to fire the gun at some point.
Guralnick should state a disclaimer of that, and the way his interviews are making it sound as the truth. Well, he does say in the interviews that he stands by what he wrote in Careless Love. And he just, he talks about, what he wrote and the stories that were told. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could put a disclaimer in there, but I don't know. That's kind of a good point. I don't know what to say about that. Um, so as far as that's concerned, I'm golden sticking with what It just doesn't make sense. How many times have Bender done interviews and done these documentaries and wrote the book, and it's a totally different story.
Yeah, no, Steve's story has always stayed the same. He's
Yeah,
never, he's never,
he's
and
never
that and
enhanced or anything like that.
no, he's never embellished anything. He's never taken anything away from it, which tells me that his story is closer to the truth, if anything. Because if you're gonna lie about something, you're gonna forget what you lie, and you're gonna add stuff. You're gonna take stuff out. You're gonna change it to whatever narrative you need it to be on the night in question. But Steve's story has always stayed the same. Therefore, yeah, I tend to agree with you. I tend to take his version of events for being closer to the truth, if not 100% true, or way more truthful than what the Colonel's recount would have
Yeah,
been.
yeah. I that's the way I am,
No,
man.
and Susan's right. Steve Bender has no reason to lie. I mean,
No,
he was shafted out of royalties because he spoke to Parker about royalties if there's a soundtrack album from the special, and Parker turned around and said there would not be a soundtrack album. Meantime, back at the ranch, he'd already spoken to RCA about. In fact, those masters were already at the pressing plant by the time been there, had spoken to Colonel. Those albums were already being pressed at the pressing plant. So
Yeah.
I agree. Steve had no reason to lie, whereas Colonel had every reason
Yeah.
to make sure that he got a bigger piece of the pie. And in many instances, if not all the instances, he did.
Let me remove that real quick. Exit screen share. And let me get this other one up here. So, interview. Because what I did is I watched that one interview that we watched the other day, and then there was one this morning. I took them and I had them transcribed.
Mhm.
They were talking. He was talking about the trip to go see Nixon,
Mhm.
and the reason why he got up and just left. And I don't know if I've ever heard this before, and if somebody else, put in the comments. But the reason why he got up is because people were all were hounding him about spending his money, him and Priscilla and all. Everybody's saying you're spending too much money. He's just like, fuck it. He got off the plane, decided he was going to go see Nixon and get a badge. He didn't even know, according to what Guralnick is saying from the letters, is that we know it was kind of a spur of the moment with him, but he didn't know he was going to go see Nixon at the beginning until that's why he wound up going to one city into the other and got Schilling involved. The reason he went was because basically Vernon and Priscilla, he said I don't want to say they ganged up on him, but they came together and said you've got to cut down on spending, you have to do this, and he just stormed out the door. These are Guralnick's words. Flew to L.A. When he got to L.A., he called up Jerry Schilling, and he decided I'm going back, and then they flew to Washington, and we know the rest of the story. I've never heard that was the reason why he took off. I've never read it in another book. I agree, Susan. Peters should put a disclaimer coming off as. Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, I think you're right. He should have put on there. This is. I don't know how you put it. This is Parker's story.
Yeah, these documents pertain to Parker's perception of
Yeah, I mean,
events
how can it
and
be?
facts.
Yeah, how can it be Guralnick's book other than he put it together? How can it be his narrative when everything that's in this book is based upon? Now, he put in some of the other facts that he knew about and all that, all the growing up and all that. But all these stories are all straight from the mouth, of Colonel Parker through the documents. And like I said before, my conclusion is that Parker fudged things through the years to make himself look good. And I think he based things on fact, but he made it look like, he wasn't the manipulator and all that. And you know what? When I read some of this, I don't think he was as much of a manipulator on some things. Now, when it got down to when he was hungry for money and all that, and this whole story about the selling of the royalties from RCA, we talked about this too, Cam, is that there's two different stories, and both stories come from Guralnick in the interview and in the book. The one in the book says that RCA came to him and wanted to buy the royalties. And Parker didn't want to sell him. And this is true. Parker was one about ownership. That's why he had 50% of, songs and things like that. He was about owning stuff and not just, having he wanted of course the RCA owned the Masters already. They wanted the royalties and all that. So they offered $3 million, wound up with $5 million. Now in the interview, he comes up, it's brought out, and I may have these reversed, but one or the other. It was Vernon going to Parker saying, "We need help. We're going to lose everything. Can you go to RCA and figure out a way where we can get some money?" And Parker didn't want to do it but he worked out the deal, and then also Parker wound up with a little bit of a side deal afterwards too for himself. But so that's a little bit of the manipulation I didn't like. But so you got two different stories. That's one's in the book and one's in the interview where it was RCA that started the negotiations, but it was Vernon and Elvis and Parker that went to RCA. Those are two different stories. Those shed two
With,
lights on the whole situation, don't you think?
which in my mind also is not an impossibility because we know that one of RCA's record plants was in deep trouble shortly before Elvis died. I mean,
Right.
they were literally closed down when Elvis died, and
And when they
Colonel
knew Elvis
Convict.
was in trouble with money too.
Yeah, so it could have been a case. It could have very easily been from RCA's perspective, knowing the investment they had with Elvis, knowing that okay, uh, come with the idea that he sells his royalties or whatever, we get a huge cash incentive. We can pull the business out of
Yeah.
dire straits, and in future we can once the company is back on its legs again, we can renegotiate something. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, that never happened because Elvis passed away. But the other side of it is, yes, Parker could have also easily gone to RCA and said, "Look, the guy needs money or whatever. This is
Yeah.
what we have to offer you."
I mean, it really doesn't make a difference when at the end of the
So,
day it was done, but it's just,
yeah,
it's not like it was written in one book 20 years ago and then written in this book this time and he's correcting the story. It's
mm,
in this book now, and then the interview says it a little bit different. It could have been both of them. Like you said, it could have just been both of them all involved. RCA may have already gone to Parker, and Parker didn't want to do it, and then Elvis
mm,
and Vernon, or Vernon goes to him. So it could have been kind of twofold, but that's not how he
no,
tells the story.
no.
And
And
that's
like
yeah, yeah,
and like you said, the specifics of it doesn't matter to me. I mean, we spoke about this. When was it? Yesterday morning. We spoke
yeah,
about it. The specifics of it doesn't matter.
yeah,
The fact is, it's history. It happened. Uh, But yeah, in my opinion, it could have happened either way. They both could have sat down and said, "Okay, well, you guys need a cash injection to keep your heads above water. I need money, so
yeah.
this is what I can offer you. Let's broker a deal here. Let's
Yeah,
talk."
Olga's got a point here that Guralnick brought up is that there's a lot of letters that Vernon wrote to the colonel about spending money and was always trying to get the colonel to talk to Elvis about it. But there's one rule that they both had: they didn't get involved in their personal affairs.
Hmm.
And really, Parker never really did, as far as get into it until towards the end when he started to. And I want to, I'll talk about a few other things. But that whole sale, which it was right after, of course, it was just not long after the Aloha special, and Guralnick talks about that in the letters as far as the Aloha, where everybody, he lost weight and all that, then immediately right after they said he just pounded it right back on right afterwards, and
Hmm.
I'm just like, well, we know he, the weight, because in '73 was really when he started punching it on, but he still looked good. I don't think he looked bad until, and I don't say bad, but he really looked not good until '77. I mean, even in '76 with some of the weight, he still looked good. It's just some of those jumpsuits, they didn't accommodate or weren't good for somebody with his size.
No, I'd even go as far as to say, probably as late as December '76. Still, he started. You could see, okay,
Yeah,
there's something.
he looked good
There's
when I
something.
saw him in December '76. He'd lost some weight and he looked good and he felt good and he was energetic. But it was after, it was right after that New Year's Eve. You're right.
But I'd say around about February of 27, 22nd, 23rd of February, those shows, you could very plainly see that, something's not right here.
Exactly, Tracy should. Helen, I feel like the only thing that made Elvis happy at the end was making the other. Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
He was just, um,
He was burned out.
and Parker was trying to get some of the letters that, the more I think about it here, I kind of think the majority of the letters are legitimate letters, weren't manufactured later. I think they were done during the time period. But Parker wrote them knowing someday somebody's going to read them. And he knew very
Mhm.
well he's not going to write a letter that will come back to make him look bad.
No.
Like I said, the guy was intelligent. He knew how to protect it. And you look at it from the 50s and into the 60s before everything started going downhill. With money and all that, he protected Elvis in every. In just one chapter, I turned to the very first chapter after the prologue. It made my stomach turn. You know what the name of the first chapter is? Def-
Hmm.
Defending Elvis. I know he's going to be getting a little chubby over that one, man.
Somebody's going to get an ego inflation from
Yeah.
that.
Um, Angie Marchese in a recent interview that the book will make you think. Oh, it does. And I'm gonna once I get the, you know, I've got a lot of spots bookmarked in the Kindle version. Um, but I can't wait to get the hard copy too, where I can have it sitting there because I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to eat that book up. I mean, you know what I mean. I'm going to get into that book. And have you got a copy of it?
No.
I'll get you a digital copy.
Okay, that would be cool.
It's 600 some pages. Half is narrative and half are all the letters, and the letters are really interesting. And they put them on chronological um, order. But Parker was trying to get him to change up his. This is the only time he really started getting into Elvis's creativity and all that. And he would just, according to the letters, and they're in the letters that he wrote to Elvis, saying, listen, I think you're stale. You're in a rut. You need to change things up. Maybe you get rid of the opening. Also, Sprock there's the 2001 opening and start going back to an opening like you did when you got back in '69. And you and I talked about that a couple of weeks
Hmm.
ago in our inside the studio
Yeah.
about opening up with what was it, "Power of My Love" or
Oh,
Where the Love Don't Look.
yes.
Yeah, just something like that would have been incredible, but we can't. That's it. But that's insignificant stuff like that to me is nothing. But on as far as so those are two things that I want to discuss and give you my opinion about. I just think it's kind of strange that you get, and it may just be just not being completely thorough with how he's describing that sale. When he's talking in the interview, you don't always remember everything in an interview, anyways, when you're writing stuff down. But that's too much of a difference. And then what's interesting too is that I didn't realize this, but when he met Larry Geller in '64,
Hmm.
he got into all that spiritual stuff. And from '64 to '66, he didn't record one studio album. He did soundtracks, but he did no. The last song he recorded was Memphis, Tennessee, and then the next one was the How Great Thou Art, the gospel album. For almost 2 years, he didn't record anything. He was all into that spiritual thing, and that
Look,
RCA was pissed about that.
look, I think generally, well, the consensus that I reach in my mind is this, right? The point is, we can sit and debate as to why, when, where, and how. That'll always stay an open ended debate, but my statement is this. We know that from about 74 onwards, Elvis was bored shitless with his career. Um, and I think, unfortunately, he just got to a point where he looked at situations and he realized that a lot of people that were around him for the meal ticket and didn't really have his best interest at heart in terms of really giving him useful advice or useful direction. Um, I think he just got to the point where he lost sight of it. He lost the passion for it. And we all know that that doesn't make him any lesser, because there are musicians today that still do it. They go for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, John Lennon fell out for 5 years. He took a 5 year break from the industry completely. And when he came back, the last album he put out was, he said it himself, was one of the best albums he'd put out in years. So maybe, you know, Elvis had gotten to that point, but he just didn't have the ability or opportunity, whether for financial reasons or personal reasons or whatever the reasons might have been. He didn't have the possibility to step away and say, okay, I'm going to take a year off or 2 years off or 3 years off and regather my thoughts, refocus myself, and come back blazing on all fours. I think unfortunately he didn't have that opportunity, and I think it caught up to him.
Yeah.
He just became demotivated, demoralized, depressed, and just withdrawn about the whole situation, because he realized, okay, I'm in this hole here, and I don't actually have anyone that's going to bring any light to the situation.
Taylor Swift did what? Elvis and Friends. I can't. I don't even like. I don't even put her in the same sentence as Elvis. She's a,
Yeah.
you know, she's a computer auto tune. Took a hiatus. Yeah. Well.
From what? From pressing buttons?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my opinion. You don't
She
have,
needed,
we
she
have,
needed a few relationships to break up with and write a couple more songs. Something like that. Yeah. She's a. I mean, like I said, I give her credit. She got the right crowd to watch her, and she's a gimmick. But as a songwriter and as a singer, we've heard it. She doesn't sing on key.
okay, now I'm
He
going
is
to
now
dispute
that's
that.
crap. She is no
I,
way the modern Elvis. Absolutely not.
I'm gonna dispute that until cows fly
That's the most
backwards.
ridiculous statement we've had on here.
That's even worse in my mind than saying,
You
what's
can't.
that dude's,
Yeah,
you can't,
Justin
it's
Bieber.
like,
You can't compare fan base to what Elvis has. Fan base today has streaming. They have internet. Elvis didn't have that. They had to go down to the stores. They had to buy the records. They had to listen to them on the radio. They had to,
yeah,
yeah, totally different. You can't even compare the two. You can't even put them. You can't even put them in the same sentence. She
no.
can't sing. Anyways, I'll just leave it at that.
Hmm.
Olga, is there a question? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so on the movies, he talks about the movies and shows the letters that Parker wrote to the movie studios, telling them that Elvis wanted better scripts, better songs, more dramatic roles along, and that he shows the letters that over time and time, and it kind of comes down, and we don't have anything but just blaming it on Parker, because there's nothing else. That we don't have anybody saying that he said no to Stars Born, any of those. The studios didn't want him to do, because they were making money off of soundtracks. So Parker, he did the soundtracks. This, and there's comments from Hal Wallace and all that. They saw, in the studios made them, and then they talk about when he went out and did Flaming Star and Wild in the Country, they didn't make the money that the other ones did, so they didn't want to give Elvis dramatic roles.
Hmm.
So that impacted a lot of what Elvis was. Now, when it got later down the road, and you got Stars Born as all that, I don't know. I didn't get a chance to really review that part of it. But that's that kind of discusses that. And you know what? I can kind of understand that and believe that in one aspect, but I do know that that Parker did really, he did, when things were going, he knew he was going to make the money off the album, the song, the movies that had the songs in them, because they were going to sell the albums until it got to, I guess it started really going downhill when they weren't really making any money just before Clam Bake.
Here's another point to think about. This is just a question that popped up in my mind. Do you think Elvis got to the point where that he stopped asking for like more serious roles and that kind of thing because he knew what a chess game it would be to get the colonel to agree to say yes? Do you think he just got to a point of saying, you know what, I'm not even going to mention wanting to do this because Colonel's going to want to fight for publicity and Colonel's going to have to want to fight for top billing and all the rest of it and blah, blah, blah. You know what? To get him to say yes to the deal is going to take more effort than actually what it's worth. And just, oh, well.
Well, they don't really have any kind of documentation or any kind of proof that, based upon what Guralnick had and all that, where Parker ever did that. There's nothing to say. There's nothing out there other than just blame it on Parker about the movies. But
Yeah, I know. But
when you read when you read these letters and all that, you could see Parker asking them that Elvis wants more dramatic roles, and the studios didn't want to give them because they were making money off of them. So Parker had no other choice but to have to go with the flow and just push them out. This is the only way we're going to make money. We're going to do these movies. We get out of these contracts, eventually. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate. But when I read the letters and, and then stop and think, everything I've ever read, it's always been, the Memphis Mafia guy said that Parker didn't want him to do it, but I never heard Elvis ever say. Of course, Elvis never talked about any of this stuff anyways.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I am my mistake. I failed to mention that. Maybe that although there was never any documentation made of such
Yeah,
fact, but
no.
maybe it could have been a thought that Elvis was wrestling with, silently thinking, you know what? Yeah, I want to do all these kind of things, but it's going to be such a logistical nightmare because Colonel's going to want this and the company's going to want that. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be kind of like a ping pong ball at the end of the day that has to prove my right to bounce in the court kind of thing. And you know what? The energy is not worth the outcome.
Yeah.
Maybe he was in that. Maybe he was already kind of in that state of mind to say, you know what? It's going to be such a logistical nightmare. It's going to be a ping pong game from here to there. I'm going to be the poor idiot lost in the middle. Let's just say no.
Yeah.
And let's just say no to make it easier for everyone involved.
Yeah, there's no, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and here Tracy touches on a point that you and I touched on earlier in the week. We basically said the same thing. Had he been given decent scripts by the companies, they could have easily done it because it would
Yeah.
have meant putting out one or two good movies a year, and the rest of the time he could have gone out on tour.
Yeah, yeah, we talked about that. Why not? Why did they just give him the chance to get a good role? I mean, Flaming Star and Wild in the Country, they were good roles, but they weren't like, Oscar type roles because the writing really, the stories really weren't. Wild in the Country had a decent story, but it wasn't Oscar worthy, or it wasn't, high caliber, like putting them in True Grit, or what's the other one, West Side Story, or Midnight Cowboy, or Stars Born, or any of those ones that had a chance. Because I can tell you, if they had given him the opportunity after watching him knowing
Hmm.
what kind of actor he is. If they had done that, he would have at least, I believe, honestly believe that that man would have at least been nominated for an award.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no question about that he could pull off a dramatic role. I mean, we look at his performance in Love Me Tender, King Creole, and uh, and Jailhouse Rock. Not Jailhouse Rock, Wild in the Country.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Had he been given, I mean, even Jailhouse Rock to a certain extent was pretty good.
Well, that's what he
And in,
talks about in the book. He talks about the first four movies being good movies.
yeah,
But he says what happened is they started the movie Loving You and Jailhouse, well, really not Jailhouse Rock, but Loving You kind of was the pre-formula of what they were going to do
coming
moving
going
forward. And then
going
I
ahead.
would say that the only movies when he come out of the military, because it goes straight into GI Blues, which nice soundtrack and everything, but and then Blue Hawaii. That was a good movie, great soundtrack. I thought it was a good movie, but it's just an entertaining movie.
Hmm.
The only I can't name one movie there that would have been something that where he would be honored for a nomination, and not because of him, but because of the script and the storyline and just the, singing. And I get into the stuff about the movies and it irritates me. But when you read the letters, and when you read it, Cam, I think when we go through it, I think we'll have little short discussions now and then about what we find in the book, because it's such a great reference book. But when we get through the letters and you start reread it, it's just that you kind of change your perspective of the approach about the movies. Did I think
Hmm.
Parker was 100% innocent of that? No, but I think he did. You think about something. Parker was the top manager with Eddie Arnold.
Hmm.
Okay, he gave up everything on Eddie Arnold to go to a unknown 19-year-old, different style, everything, and take a risk with him. And his job was to promote him and do everything for him, right?
Hmm.
So when you read these letters that go to the studios and all that, you can see, well, yeah, he's doing his job, but how hard did he do his job? These in the public eye, these directors were, they were saying, yeah, who was the one that did Hal Wallace did the most of the movies, and sometimes he didn't like him, sometimes he did. There was a couple of directors that really liked him, but behind the scenes, there was I don't want to I like him because he's a moneymaker. I don't see him in a dramatic role, because they were more about the money and they weren't. I just, but once again, I'm not going to defend Parker, but I think some of these stories make a little more sense about that. Now, it's a conclusion, and we got a lot more to talk about, but in the conclusion of what I feel about this book and what the outcome, and especially after the interview, because that interview, it irritated me and upset me, and it's just like, what is basically what I was saying. What is this? But when I started doing a little bit more of a kind of a deep dive into it and trying to understand about what, and then when I wasn't even through the book yet, so when you hear the interview and you haven't read the book, all you're doing is getting tidbits in here, and you're like, well, I need the rest of the story to understand what's going on. So
Hmm.
when I read the book, I started seeing that they kind of clarified what Guralnick was saying. So he was like throwing out the appetizers, but the whole meat of the story was in the book.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, Guralnick does shed a better light on Parker, but it's all about through Parker's words. And
Hmm.
that's what a lot of people, I don't think, I haven't heard anybody say that. I haven't heard
Hmm.
anybody say that. Well, this is. I'm sure there are, because it's not like I'm the only one that would ever come to that conclusion. But I haven't heard. Well, Guralnick said it. This is Parker's words. This is from him. These are his stories, his
Hmm.
lines. I mean, his history, his documents. So whatever Guralnick said, he was doing was relaying what Parker had said. Now,
Hmm.
I still go with the line, and I'm sure that there were a lot of documents that were fudged to favor Parker over the years as he wrote them. At one time I was thinking, well, he went back and he just kind of covered his ass on stuff, but I don't think that now. I just think he covered his ass as he went.
It was a natural thing for him to do.
Right. And that, he was a snowman, and he was going to make himself look good. And, it's just, when you read the stories and some of the major scenes of his life, you can see some of the frustrations of trying to get him through. But the stories that we believe and what Parker's saying are there's a difference. But I find it hard to believe that everything that Parker's saying is true, especially with the
No,
60th special.
no.
That just gets me. We've said it over and again. Why would Bender ruin his reputation? And we said the same thing about Guralnick. Why would he ruin his reputation to go in there and defend Parker? Well, he's really not. All he's doing is just relaying
Relaying Parker's
yeah, he's
words.
telling Parker's story from the grave. And he
Yeah.
talked to Loan because those are the only two people really. Other than he did talk to Parker for a while, and he talked to some other people. I think he talked with Tom Diskin and some of the key players, but those are all Parker people. And
And let's not forget at the time that Binder was asked to do the special, at that point in time, Binder was one of the top uh, film producers in
yeah,
country.
he had a great series and all that was on. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, he was one of the top producers, like the guy that did Aloha from Hawaii. He was a top producer or director. What's
Mhm.
Tracy saying? When I read the comments from that interview, nearly all, people have been attacking Guralnick, and I can understand when you first go through it. But that's why I asked at the beginning how many people read the book, and all I do is implore to you. I'm not trying to tell you that I'm right about it, but all
Make
I'm
up your
saying
own.
is you need to read the book and compare it to the interview and understand what he was saying, and then make your
Yes.
judgment from the book and understand that is Parker. That's his story, and it's
Mm.
coming from his mouth, for a better term. And because when Gronick says, "I still stand by what I said in Careless Love," he wrote that in Careless Love. You know,
Mm.
and there's too many. There's a few references in there that I don't like. As far as I don't like it when he refers to books by Albert Goldman or Alana Nash, because those books are.
Trash.
But I'm sure there's points in there that freaking itch. But anyway, read the book, because when I did the poll, nobody had read the book, which was not a problem. But all I'm saying is try not to pass 100% judgment on the interview without the whole meat of it. The interviews is kind of an appetizer, and compare it. And then you come. I think you'll come. You still won't be happy with what's told in the story, but I think you'll come to. I think it'll ease some of the frustration and the anger from what is said, because it did for me. I don't like what was said. I don't like the fact that when they talk about the touring, that back in the '60s and all that, Elvis wanted to tour during the '60s, and Parker was working. It talks about Parker and his illegal status, but at the time in the '50s or the '60s, back when Elvis wanted to tour, there wouldn't have been an issue for Parker to leave the country, because he could have just left with his driver's license. Because there's examples of some other people that had come to this country at the same time, and during that period of time, they weren't so adamant about showing a passport. They just wanted to see a driver's license to leave the country. And he did.
Yeah, and I
He
mean,
also states in there he didn't have to. He didn't have to go anyways. He could have sent Tom Diskin or Tom
yeah, he
Dooley
would.
or whoever.
Yeah, he would have been perfectly happy sending Diskin because just about Tom Diskin was probably the only person he really trusted without any reservations. So he could have easily sent
Hmm.
Diskin to do it.
the book kind of tells me through the letters, and there's letters from Elvis too. It's not. It goes both ways. It's not letters from Parker. It's letters that were sent to him too, and there's loads of them, man. That's why it's one of those things where you've got to devote some time. It's not like reading a regular book. It is
Mm.
so. It's an adventure, and you got to stop back, and that's why I highlight as I go, and I got highlights. I got 80 pages of highlights there. There's no way I could go through them all here, you know.
Wow.
But it's like this one. This is the interview from the Naked Lunch. Where they're the ones that brought up about the not recording for a couple years, um, and then there's a studio bio that Parker wrote, and all it does is talk about what a wonderful person he was, and how much he loved Elvis. And I honestly believe that he did care and love Elvis. As I just think that they were both they were both damaged people by that time, and I mean that in the aspect of um, addictions
Mm.
and and just you know it's a shame because Elvis, there's so much that he could have done, but what's the answer? How could it have changed? I don't know. I can't even tell you what would have changed it all. But Parker couldn't go to Elvis and say, "Hey, you know what? You need to get off. You need to get off those prescription drugs. They're killing you." And Elvis, knowing Elvis, he would have turned and say, "Well, you know what? You need to quit gambling."
Mm.
So neither one of them had a right to say anything to one of the other ones. And of course,
Mm.
with Elvis, anybody came to him and said, you need to stop doing this or that, Elvis would say, "Hey, you know where the door is? You can go."
Yeah, and maybe the colonel knew that to a certain extent too. Had he gone to Elvis with that, Elvis would have easily said to him, "Okay, well, if that's how you feel, bye bye." Knowing that there would have been people standing in queues to take over from where the colonel left off.
Yeah, that's brought up in the that's a good point. Yeah, Tracy, that's brought up in the book too. What you just said, in not a, that Parker didn't want. He was
Yeah.
very protective of Elvis being indoctrinated to other people, to
Mm.
other industries or something that would pique his interest that Parker, first of all, didn't know anything about, or would have taken Elvis from him because Elvis could have canceled that contract, and it doesn't make any difference how much Parker he owed Parker.
No.
All he could have just said, "Okay, fine, we'll take me to court for it, and we'll hold it up for years. By that time, I'll have enough money to pay you off."
Yeah, I mean, we and Tracy hits on a good point here because you and I spoke about it months ago. That was, in fact, my my perception and my reasoning as to why the colonel stifled the relationship between Elvis and Binder, because the colonel knew that Binder would open Elvis's eyes to what was really going on. And in my opinion, that's the main reason why Colonel sort of wormed Binder's way out of the equation, because Connor knew that Binder was aware to what was going on, not only between him and the Colonel, but in the industry in general. And Binder could have easily said to Elvis, "But listen, this and that is going on here, or you need
Mhm.
to look at this, that, and the next thing." And once Elvis had gotten somebody like Steve Binder behind him that would have stood for
You're
with him,
welcome.
advocated with him, the colonel knew that the chances of him being out on the bones of his ass would have been 90% out of 100, and he didn't want to take that chance. That's why he got rid of Bender altogether.
I want to say something about the interview when it first came out. I forget who. I think Olga might have been the one that sent it to me, but everybody was affected in a different way, but everybody's affected in a a negative, heartbroken, I on Tuesday, you guys know my feeling about Elvis, and what I do is much to protect his legacy and that. And when I read that, when I heard the interview, I'd only read about maybe the first 3 or 4 chapters of the book by that point, so I hadn't even gotten into the meat of it yet. And I read that, and I almost like, what the hell do I even want to read this book now? He's just ruined the ending for me. Is basically what I was thinking to myself. And then I had a discussion with Olga's talked about it a little bit here. I had a discussion with her, um, and with every right, people like her, where it just destroyed them, and I don't want to relay what she said to me. I'm sure she'll, she'll say it on there, but I don't want to break that confidence. But the only thing I will say is that it broke my heart to hear her talk about it way, because I know how much she loves Elvis. And I had no words to say at all. I didn't know what to say because there wouldn't have been any words. I just wanted to be able to hear it. And then I started reading the comments and the other people, and they were all coming through the same way. And that's why I wanted to do the live chat that night. But the wise decisions from like people like Susan and Lori and other people said, you know what, you need to wait a little bit. We need to get rested, and it worked out because I did get some good rest this week. And but it was just like I needed that, because I didn't read the book the rest of the day, and the next day I started getting back into it. And as I got more into it, I started to see a little bit of understanding of what Guralnick was saying. That's why I stress so much that no matter what your opinion is at the end of it, after you read the book, you're going to understand. I think one thing you really need to understand, or will understand, is that these are the words of Parker. So I don't, I've always thought highly of Guralnick. This is a big rabbit hole that he's gotten into here, because he had to know that this is going to really affect a lot of fans. But I think the way he put it together was brilliant in the aspect of from the mouth of Colonel Parker. So it kind of helps you out. And then you can make the decision at the end, like I did. I believe Bender. I believe Bender on the movies. On the 68 special. I kind of halfway I'm on the fence, but I kind of can accept what Parker's saying about the studios, because the studios, they're the ones that have the final say of what movies are going to go. Not Parker and not Elvis. So they would have a say as far as, if they're laid in front of them and say, you're going to do this movie, and they could have said no, but they still had a contract to finish off. The songs, they had no choice. Nobody had a choice in that. Those were through the studio production company for the songs. Wind up with songs like Beat Shack, or Old McDonald. But I can understand. I kind of accept. I kind of give a 50-50 leeway towards the situation with the movies. Could Marker have done more to push it? I don't know. Could he pulled away from once those contracts were done with the studios? They had the money, they had the clout, they had the power. They could have gone to an independent company real easily, made a movie. You think about movies like Midnight Cowboy and all that were just made on a shoestring budget. And look at, Oscars for that movie. But you know what? Parker, that wasn't Parker's field. His field was music. So anyway, I just want to suggest to everybody that you do need to read the book and not live off of not just allow the interview be the only source that you have. Or these interviews. That's all I can say about that. I mean, there's other stuff in this book that I want to talk about. I don't want to just end it right here because see the interview that this is the interview that we're talking about right here, and I'm going to talk about some of the highlights from that interview. This is transcribed, so this is word for word. You got something to say, Cam, before I'm going to look for some things here.
Um,
Sound like you were getting ready to say something.
yeah, I'm just trying to coordinate my thoughts here. I think I think you made the point earlier, and I kind of agree with you to say yes, it was a good thing we didn't do the live initially, because I think we all would have been hot-headed about it, because initially that was my first response too, because I also lost sight of the fact that um, the new book is just Guralnick talking uh, on behalf of Parker. He's just a mouthpiece.
Yeah,
Whereas Peter's previous two books, he was able to take history
right.
and he put his own perspective onto it and interpret it as he sees it. Um, Whereas here, he had no choice, and I almost want to go as far as to say that uh, a lot of the negative reviews that he's gonna be getting, people are losing sight and not maybe even realizing that this is just Guralnick talking on behalf of the colonel. It's not Guralnick's perspective, it's not his thoughts, it's literally from the perspective of Parker. But because the book has Guralnick's name on it, people are automatically assuming that what's written in the book is Peter's perspective and take on it. So in certain instances, I think he's taking a lot of bullets from guns that shouldn't really be fired his way, because he's just a messenger, basically. Um, but yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think people need to be fair to all sides, read the book with the understanding that this is from Parker's perspective and Peter is just a mouthpiece. Read the book, take
I
it all in,
mm,
and make up your own mind about it.
yeah, I think you're going to come away good, bad, or ugly with a different perspective of Parker as a person. And I think I saw some good qualities out of him. I saw some other stuff that were the thing about Parker and Elvis is they were almost they were almost um not opposites. They were same as far as being I can't think of the right word right now. Determined. They set their sights to something and nobody's gonna
Yeah,
I can't think of the right word right now, but this part right here that I want to go back to the tours of Europe real quick. So there was an offer on the table by a Japanese promoter that was an offer to Elvis to do a tour, and Parker said that he didn't think that Elvis would want to do it, but he laid it on the table for Elvis to take a look at. And then they were talking about security and all that, and so Guralnick went to talk. He talked to Priscilla about that situation. Why, I don't know. Of all people, she wasn't even married to him anymore. She said that all the guys wanted to go to Europe. Well, of course they did. And Elvis, in fact, sent both Joe Esposito and Jerry Schilling to Europe on a vacation to take a look at it. He's very close to them, and it was a wonderful vacation. They went to Greece. Priscilla said all the guys wanted to go to Europe, and Elvis acted like he wanted to go to Europe because this would be in the 60s. But according to Priscilla, that when they got behind closed doors between the two, he told her that he didn't want to go. Now, this I don't know. He said they wanted to go to the Bahamas instead. And then they
but
wanted to
okay,
stay
this is
and they couldn't go. And this is all stuff that happened behind door closed. How do you prove that? I don't believe
yes.
what Priscilla says.
I wanted to throw in here at the same time. This is also coming from the person that said that Lisa was away at camp.
Yeah, no. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, in that sense, yes, I agree with both Cat and Susan. But with regard to Susan's comment, I kind of Susan reminds me about something that I said to you early in the week when we were talking about it, and that was one of my main concerns too. Susan, was the fact uh, that Guralnick did know the colonel personally and had a relationship with him for a number of years, no
Yeah,
matter
10 years they said. Yeah.
how deep that relationship goes. Unfortunately, uh, Peter Guralnick couldn't be absolutely 100% objective in relaying the facts in the correspondence, because whenever you have a close relationship with someone, your perception with regard to that person and your level of respect for that person is always going to come into play. It's basically going to be the same kind of situation if, let's say, 30, 40 years from now, somebody discovers a shitload of diaries and whatever the case that Rick might have, and somebody comes to me and says, "Okay, Cam, take these diaries and write a book. Uh, write Rick's life story based on the diaries you found." I wouldn't be able to write a book or a biography or a life story about Rick solely based on those diaries that I found, because I know him so intimately and personally. My personal feelings and perceptions are going to be used to in character reference and in character building. So from that perspective, I agree with you, Susan, that yes, he possibly is taking the point of kind of taking Parker's side in a way, but I don't think he's doing that intentionally and consciously. I think that just is a reflection of the relationship that they had and the level of respect that Peter had for him as a person. Because once you know somebody that well, you cannot remove your emotion from telling the story anymore. And in terms of what CCAT said, and this is something that I said to Rick early in the week, in fact, when I was listening to all these other channels and all these other people making these ill informed opinions and all the rest of it. And I actually made a comment on another channel, in fact, where I said, the ins and outs of history are irrelevant. When Elvis did what or how the colonel did whatever, to me personally, is irrelevant. The dates and how it exactly happened,
Mm,
to me, is irrelevant, because that doesn't take away what Elvis means to me and what
yeah,
he has meant in my life. So whether he recorded his first song in 1954 or
yeah,
1952,
that make a
it
difference.
it it don't make a difference. The point that makes the difference for me is he did it anyway, and
Yeah, it's like
he still became what he became, and he's still able 47 years later to touch people's lives and bring people together and give people a reason to wake up in the morning. And I think that's where I agree with you, C Cat, in saying that the ins and outs and the dilly dallies about history should be irrelevant here. Those people should be looking at it and saying, you know what, whether I do know for a fact, if a person could prove it somehow or another, if Elvis did whatever on day X at whatever time, is that going to change your reason for being an Elvis fan? Is that going to change what Elvis means in your life? And if your answer is yes, by knowing those exact facts, it's going to make you feel differently about Elvis, then you need to reevaluate why you an Elvis fan to begin with. Because for me, whether he recorded on the 5th of July or the 16th of August 1952, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
he still brought something. He still woke something up inside me, and helped me through very difficult situations in my life, and that is what we should be focusing on. The absolute the absolute facts of history should be irrelevant, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
with my aspect. So I up until around not long after he died, I didn't know, I didn't have a negative. I didn't know of anything negative about Elvis because back then, of course, you didn't have the internet. All I had was just watching the movies and records and stuff like that. I never read the tabloid magazines because I knew those were garbage and shit. I wasn't about to read those, but I love the guy, and especially after '68 special, I wanted to be him. I wanted to wear a leather suit to school and get my ass kicked for wearing it. I didn't care. I wanted to
Mhm.
be that guy. And then when the book came out, yeah, I read the book, Elvis, What Happened, and I thought, wow, wow, wow. But you know what? It took me about a week or so to think, you know, okay, he did have. It looks like, and I'm learning that at that time. I'm learning. Well, it looks like he did have a problem with prescription drugs. And it was a good thought for me to think that there was nothing hardcore. I just looked at it as a positive that it wasn't, street drugs. But still, there's a lot of negative stuff, as we know, about Elvis in there. At the end of the day, it didn't change one iota of how I felt about the man himself. It just showed me that the guy was a freaking human. And that he,
Mhm.
before that, to me, he was a god. He
Mhm.
didn't do anything wrong. He walked on water. And that's how I always
Mhm.
felt. To this
Mhm.
day, he's still the biggest, the goat, the greatest of all time, singer, humanitarian, everything. Nothing that I have read in this book by Guralnick or anybody else, I could care less what happened to Hank Snow.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with Elvis's career. It's a
Yes.
wonderful story to hear about it, but you know what? At the end of the day, Hank Snow's story is the same thing as Parker's story. It's his story. And
Yes.
everything that comes out and talks about was that, this is what happened on this day, this is what happened on that day. But you know what? They can't prove it. And at the end of
Mm.
the day, everything that's in this book, you can't prove.
No.
You just got to go by, trust the fact that you got to say, okay, well, maybe Parker's right. You just got to sit there and say, am I going to allow this to interfere with my love that I've had for Elvis all these years? Or am I going to understand, oh, you know what? I don't like him anymore because, he couldn't tour because he, wanted his guns and his drugs, or he slept around too much, or whatever negative stuff. I couldn't care less. I really could not care less because my memories of Elvis that I always have are music, movies, concerts, and that's it. I know the other stuff, but I don't think about it. I
Yeah.
read about the stuff, but it's like, okay, that's an interesting thought, and we talk about it. And I think we all, I think a lot. That's what I like about doing these book chats, is because it kind of helps me hash through some of the stuff and say, at the end of the day, say, okay, well, that book's done, good stuff. I don't like it, whatever. So I know a lot of people were impacted by the interview, and it's going to take a while, but we have a caller
I
on.
gotta hold. I
Huh?
gotta hold my thought.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey
Now
guys. Hey
Hey, Olga.
everybody.
there's a voice I recognize.
So thankful that you are doing this book chat today. I have gotten myself in a better space in mind
Oh,
since I
good.
last talked to you.
I'm
I'm
glad.
trying to look at it a couple different angles and feel a different way. But I think just that initial day, I was
Yeah.
so crushed.
Well, I was the
I just
same
wanted
way.
to hug people, and I didn't have anybody to hug.
I
I
know.
was
I know. I
crying.
could tell. My heart was breaking when I was talking to you, and I couldn't do nothing. I
I
didn't even know what
know.
to say, but And that's why it's good. I'm really glad that Lori and Susan and a few Kirsty and all them recommended that I hold off and do this,
Yeah,
because
that was good.
that's excellent, because we all had a chance to kind of calm down and
Yeah.
soak it in, and then I had a chance to actually read the book. And I'm telling you, if whoever's going to read the book, be prepared. You're going to need to read it a couple times, because
Yeah.
it is a deep book.
There's
But
a
I'm
lot to unpack,
fascinated.
huh?
I'm fascinated by that book, good, bad, or ugly. I just love the way he put it together.
Right.
It's just it's like a resource, a reference book, and there's a lot of stuff that I learned about him that I know is true, and it's just because it's just history of him growing up, and then the meeting of Elvis and the Hank Snow story and all Eddie Arnold and all that. But
Yeah.
the other stuff is just like, okay, well, Parker's had his chance to tell his story now. It's out there, and we could take it. We could take it just as much as we want to take any other book written by anybody else about Elvis, even
Right. I mean, I'm
Guralnick's
going
book.
to get it and read it as well.
Yeah,
Of course, I'm going to the discussions, but I think just that day, because I hadn't read the book, and I've read the two previous books from
Yeah.
Guralnick, and then to listen to that interview at work, I left work crying, Rick.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at me like, "What's wrong?" Because nobody ever sees me break down like that.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I don't mean that in a shitty way, but I'm pretty. I can hold my own shit, at least But I walked off the line and grabbed my shit. I didn't even wash up and got the hell out of there because I was breaking down. I felt weak. I was just like, oh my God, I didn't know how to feel.
Yeah, well, I sent it right
awful.
away. Right away, I sent it to Cam to look into, and he come back and Cam's got a lot more nerve than I did. He just come back and says, "Well, what what was it you said? Something about no big news there, or something like that."
Yeah,
What he did is he put it in perspective, because I react. I'm a knee jerk reaction type of person, and
I know.
and I reacted to this in a way that I got pissed, because I thought, why the hell is Guralnick doing this? But then I thought,
Yeah.
I got to read the book to understand that.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, when you don't read the book,
Kathleen's sending you
familiar
a hug
with
just
his
to let you
work,
know.
Hi everybody, and sending you guys all hugs and kisses. But it floored me because I was
Yeah.
like, this is like the first thing I had listened about the new book, and it just was like destroyed me at work. I was just like, what the fuck are you doing to my hero?
I know.
Like, what the hell here? And at the end of the interview, when he's like, well, Elvis didn't want to tour out of the country, and I'm like, what are you trying to say? Elvis is telling his fans, F you. I was just so delirious.
Yeah.
I just couldn't even hold any comment or any good thoughts.
Yeah.
I was just crushed, like, because he comes off in that interview as it's so truthful. Well, can you imagine somebody else who doesn't know anything about anything and click on that?
Yeah.
They're gonna have the same feeling like I did.
Well, the only thing that really got me, and I had to think about, because I listened to the interview again, and I didn't hear it in the first time, but when he made the remark, I still stand by what I wrote in Careless Love. I knew that's where the point. I thought, well, wait a minute. Now I need to read the book, because why did he say that? And then getting through the book, I realized all he's doing is he's the mouthpiece for Parker.
Right. Remember me and you talked about that a couple nights ago?
Yeah.
And I got to thinking, because I watched Angie Marchese's interview.
Oh, that was good. Yeah.
And when she said, I've had the book for 2 months. Yeah. I've read it. She says, I'm really excited about it. She says, it will make you think.
Yeah.
And she kind of like left it to that. And then, like you said, Guralnick said, I stand by my other 2 books. I'm thinking, well, how the hell can you stand by those books? Yeah. And when this one's a total contradiction. And then when me and you had talked like a day or 2 later, I was like, I think he's just transcribing what he actually had in front of him. And that's what he went with.
And that's what he did. Yeah. And then he kind of filled in some spots with interviews with some people. But just to kind of fill it up a little bit as far as events that happened, But when I read the part about the 68 special, and then what got me was the whole deal about the sale from RCA, that one, and the movies. I thought, wait a second.
Yeah.
You mean I've been lied to all these years about this? And then I realized, no, I haven't. This is just
'cause
Parker's
that's
way.
how I was feeling. Like, is everything a effing lie?
Yeah.
Like, and then I had that's like after a couple of days of thinking about it and watch the interview again myself, watch Angie Marchese's interview about the book, a little bit that she touched on it.
Yeah.
I said he just took what documents he had, whether they're fictitious ones or whatever. He just took what he had and put it out in that perspective.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't actually say he agrees with everything in the book.
No, he never said that. Yeah, he never said that this is how it happened. What he said is, in Parker, Parker wrote this, and this is what he said. And then when he talked about the little bio that he put out there about himself to the studios, how he talks about him and how much he loved his client and all that. And you know what? After reading the book, I really do feel that he really cared about Elvis and loved him and did everything he could for him. But they both reached an impasse when when they weren't getting the movies, they weren't no concerts, and they were both starting to get addicted. And that's about the time Elvis really started getting into the diet pills and all that, and started.
Well, in the interview, Guralnick says, and when I listened the second time, he says like around 73 and 74, he's got letters where Parker is analyzing the situation with Elvis, and he's seeing the decline.
Yep.
So he's already in his mind, because Parker wasn't stupid. He's always 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody.
Right.
And so it's that, Peter states that he definitely saw that decline, and he was already putting things in motion for probably the what if moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I am, when I heard the interview, I almost I don't even want to read the book now.
Well, I know.
Yeah, you said that.
It to you, but
you said that to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to let Rick know. He's got to find out. Plus, I was falling apart. Like, I needed some help.
Yeah, I told Cam. I told Cam I wasn't going to read the book. It's just like, to me, Guralnick gave me the ending of the book. It's like reading a detective book and somebody comes and was like, oh, well, they killed this person and all that. That's how I felt about this with that interview. It's just like, well, he just spoiled it all for me. Why am I going to read this, And then that's when I got to thinking about it a few days. And I don't think Cam and I really talked about it much after that because we had inside the studio. But I'm glad I read it, and I can't wait. I want to get the hard copy, and I think it's it's unfortunate that I can't stress enough that everybody needs to read this book. I seriously do believe, and think about our discussion today. Think about the interview, and think about the aspect that this is Colonel Parker's story, and you can believe what you want to believe on it. At the end of the day, Elvis is the same person today that he was 2 weeks ago before the book.
Absolutely.
Nothing different. And
I was just blown away by it. And that interview will do that to you. It will blow you away. You will you want to sit the fuck down and be like, did I just hear this? Am I totally losing my mind?
Well, the thing that got me with that, and the thing that got me with that interview and the one that I listened to this morning, which was pretty good too. It's about the same length. I'll send you the link. I don't know if you want to watch it now, but it is pretty good. But what got me is the way the guys that were hosting it talked about it. I think they just kind of laughed and chuckled too much over things. And to me, it was a serious thing. But that's just me because of the topic and how I felt at the time. Listening,
right, and it's everybody's level of passion towards Elvis is differently too.
Well, that's what the guy said in the interview this morning. He said, "Well, I never really was an Elvis fan until I heard Suspicious Minds," and he read Guralnick's book, and he said, all of a sudden, I love the guy and everything. But but yeah, for everybody out there that that hasn't. If the interview bugs you and that's all you have, then you need to do yourself a favor and ease your mind and read the book. It's going to take you a little while to read it, but soak it in and read those letters and just keep in mind. And this is, my perspective, and based upon what Guralnick said too, that as far as I'm concerned, it's almost like the way Riley did with Lisa's book. Riley wrote the book from Lisa's words.
Yeah.
And this is what Guralnick did with Park, and he had 30 years worth of documents that were,
Well, he did state that when Lisa sold everything, it came to a stopping point
right
for him.
He says for a period of time it stopped and all that, and then he was able to get back into it. But it makes you wonder what the documents that McDonald has that the suits over.
I know. That's on the back burner of my mind. Like, what other documents are out there?
I think they're documents.
I kind of wonder if Parker didn't have two sets of documentation going.
Well, I think they're documents that show a bad light on Parker.
Yeah, and there's probably some fictitious stuff out there that are, that's available as well. But we'll never actually really know.
No,
but
it's just like the whole, we'll never know the real story about everything. All I know, the real story to me is that he's superhuman to me. He's a superhero. He's a human being.
That's how I feel.
That stands above any other entertainer, anybody else like that. And the heart and the humanity, you don't get that with people,
No.
And I'll give Taylor, I'll give props to Taylor Swift on one aspect. I don't think of much of her talent as a singer because I've heard it, but she does a lot for people. She gives a lot.
She does, and she gets the kids and the people involved in music again.
And it's good to see that.
Get people into music.
I give her credit for all of that because that's just kind of that to me is an Elvis quality, and
yes, exactly.
Not many people out there do that,
Yeah,
they charge.
She's not out for a money grab, She wants to entertain and she wants to help people.
Yep.
And she brings people together. I'm not a big fan of hers, but I don't dislike her for what she's doing. Not at all.
No, I just, her music's not my type of music. And,
exactly.
I come from the old, and I get critical because I come from the old age of analog and all that. And then I don't like, when I hear music on the radio, I want it to be real artists, real instruments and all that. And that to me is real talent. Plugging in something in a computer and saying, I want you to create this with this and this. That's not, that to me is not talent. It's, it's, but
you're a programmer.
A programmer.
But
you're
anyways,
a programmer.
I wanted to say thank you.
Olga, you're absolutely welcome. I'm glad. I was hoping that you were going to be able to make it today, and then I'm glad that you did because, I just wanted to get across just the point that just keep in mind of whose book this really is.
Well, yeah, and when other people read the book and they might, have more to bring to the table of understanding to it, I was just so shocked that day. I was, Rick.
No,
and I'm glad
I agree
that we waited on. You waited to do this till today.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to leave for Memphis tomorrow. So my spirits are high. I'm focusing on positive, good stuff, and
I was really exhausted, and I can't remember if Cam was going to be able to do it or not. I know he was tired, and then he decided at the last minute to do it with me, and then I just said I'm going to cancel it because, and thank God I'm glad Lori and all them recommended it because I didn't want to just do it and everybody think, well, why is he doing it? I wanted to understand and I'm glad they did because it gave me the chance to rest, to read the book, get my thoughts together, and have more of a clear conversation today. Because it wouldn't have been a pretty conversation.
No, everybody's emotions were way too high, and I was just, I don't even know. I don't know if I could have even withstood it, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because after I called you, I got home, I washed up, and I cried myself to sleep. I literally cried myself to sleep that morning when I got off work, and I was just, and I was like, I had to get my head out of my ass. I'm like, all right, get yourself together here. We got to think about this, and give it some time to kind of settle and look around and research and see if I can find anything else about it. But that interview was awful. That's an awful interview.
Yeah, I didn't like those guys the way they did the interview. Right.
The way you ended that interview, it just, I felt bad. I'm like, man, all these fans that's been, adored Elvis's music for all these years.
Yeah.
And just, just the way he came across, I thought, my goodness, that was not in good taste.
No. No.
And I think if I had the opportunity to ask Guralnick that, I think I will tell him that. I'm gonna say I watched that interview. I'm gonna tell him which one it was, and I'm gonna say that was in bad taste. You made me cry. You made me cry.
You need to buy me lunch now.
I know, right? All right. Well, I'm
All
gonna
right,
get off
there.
here because I've held you up here for a little
No,
bit.
no. I'll
you.
talk to you later. Well, because you're headed out, and I'm so excited about it for you. So
Yes, yes. And I will be in tab with all of you. And Cam, I have not forgotten you for our one-on-one, our walk up to the mediation garden. So that's going to happen
perfect.
this week. Okay.
That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, dear. Thanks a
All right. I
lot.
love you guys.
I love you
Well,
too.
everybody and the subscribers. Thank you, Susan, Lily, C-Cat, Lori. Thank you guys so much for being there for me this week. Love you all.
I'm
Bye-bye.
waving. I'm waving for you. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All
And
right. What do you think?
basically, to jump in here, what Olga is saying also, while I still have the thought fresh in my mind, I think a lot of people still unfortunately do not have the ability to separate the legend from the human being.
Right.
Although they say they do, they don't, because watching all the interviews that certain channels have made this week with regard to the book and with regard to other things too in the past, they don't completely have the ability to separate the legend from the human being. And I think this is why these kind of discussions are important, because we able to separate the legend from the human being, and that's the important part. And I'll admit, when I first watched the interview, it was really tough for me to get through it, because I was in the same minds, like, how dare these people
Right.
say these kind of things. But I always ask myself the question, and I think a lot of people, especially in Elvis's situation, should do the same thing. And only after doing that can they make an informed decision. And the question to ask is this: I always ask myself this question: if I find myself heading into a situation or into a discussion that I don't quite understand, especially if it involves somebody else, I always ask myself the question, and the question is this: if I were to go into that exact same situation that this person is referring to or coming from, only having that situation as a reference point, not having 2020 hindsight,
Right.
not knowing any better, if I was in exactly the same situation, would I have made the same choices in that situation? Uh, in that specific time and in that
Mm.
specific circumstance? And if my answer to that is yes, I probably would have made the same choices, then I am basically forced, I have forced myself to say, okay, now I can't be as judgmental. I can't be prejudiced about it. I can't come with my own 2020 hindsight or say, yeah, they should have done this or they should have done that, or this was bad or this was good. I put myself back into that situation and I say, right, if I was in the same situation, same time frame, same set of decisions, same set of choices, would I have made the same choices and same decision?
Mm.
And if my answer is yes, then I automatically find myself looking and saying, okay, but there's something deeper to this. There's a perspective and a perception here that I'm missing. And I think a lot of the channels make that mistake. They very easy to say, yeah, but Elvis should have done this, or the people around him should have done this, or whoever should have said this, or whoever should have done that. Put yourself back in that time, given the knowledge that they had to use at the time, given the tools they had to use at the time, without the benefit of 2020 hindsight, and say, would I have made the same decisions and come to the same realizations Had I been in the same situation? If your answer is yes, then you need to ease up and you need to say, okay, but wait, something here, I'm missing something important in this equation. And I try and do that all the time. Like I said with the interview that I watched at first, I thought, okay, yeah, but this, that, and the next thing. And then I kind of thought to myself, no, but wait, let me put myself or try and put myself in that situation. Let me try and go back to 1955 or 1973 or whatever the time period is,
Yeah.
and ask myself, if I was Elvis and I had those kind of expectations on me, and I was being creatively stifled and creatively unheard and creatively frustrated, personally hurt, personally deceived, personally been taken for a ride, for whatever reasons, would I have made the same choices that
Yeah.
he made? My answer is possibly yes. And therefore, I can now look back and say, because I can answer that to myself truthfully and say, yes, I probably would have made the same choices and came to
Well,
the same decisions. I can only look back and say, well, he did the best he could at the time.
yeah. What's the line he said? Walk a mile in my shoes.
Yes.
I just to let you know, I don't know if Chillin's still here, but I posted the 2 links to the 2 interviews for those of you who don't have it. I'll put them also. I'll also put them in the video description for you. I think. Anyway, this discussion has it's been a good one. I mean, the goal that I really had was I really wanted people to, you can't, not to judge something right off of one thing. You got to look at the whole picture and you know,
And also be willing to admit that, okay, like in this case, we're never going to have the whole picture as it is.
right,
Never, never ever. That picture is unfortunately, due to history and due to certain opinions, that picture has already been tainted.
right,
Unfortunately, we will never have the whole entire picture. The best thing that we can do is take whatever facts we have, whether they be subjective facts or objective facts, take whatever information we have, mull it over for ourselves,
yeah,
and make our own choices. And like I said earlier, if it's going to change your perception and how you feel about Elvis as a human being, not as the entertainer, not as the image, which I think most people, unfortunately, to this day, still do not have the ability to separate the two,
mm-mm.
whereas maybe as prejudiced or as one-sided as I might sound, we are able to do that in this group of people that are here with
Yeah,
us, but very few people are able to separate the human being from the commodity. um, you need to do that. You need to be able to say, okay, forget about the Elvis up there in the colorful lights, and look down at the Elvis here, the Elvis that was a human being, the Elvis that had pain, the Elvis that had
mm-hmm.
joys, the Elvis that had frustration, and all the rest of it that made him human, and say, right,
The Elvis is holding his little baby girl. The Elvis that's at his mother's funeral. The Elvis, those are human things. Those aren't
yes,
the the what is it? The image. That's
yeah,
the human. And
yes,
and he was
uh,
one of the most. When you think about it, he was one of the most human people out there, and Elvis didn't hide that.
no,
There was
and
some of the things he did for people that he didn't want to be. I don't want credit. I don't want anybody to know about that because I did it for them. I didn't do it for to be to know for people to make a big fuss about. But at the end of the day, the man he wasn't a recluse like some people say. He'd get on his
No,
motorcycle. That's what I liked about him living in Memphis, because everybody knew him, knew who he was, and he didn't get he didn't get bothered.
no.
It was home for him, and that's human. There he is.
If a person, can take that and say, you know what, yeah, sure, as much as some people don't want to admit it, yes, there were things that he did that some of us might not agree with. But you know what, I look at it like this and go, he had no one else to go to. He didn't have anyone else
No.
that could sincerely, honestly, and truthfully guide, help,
Mm.
support, encourage. He was left alone to do it by himself. And having faced what he faced, and having still been able to accomplish what he accomplished, yes, he had flaws
I don't
that
think
I'll
he.
never
Go ahead again.
that I'll never take that away from him. But what I will say in his defense is, from my personal perception and perspective, if I had to be placed in that situation, I probably would not be alive today talking to you guys about it, because it would be too big for me to even survive. I
I
wouldn't
don't
know.
think he even knew what he had accomplished.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And the reason why I want to almost say with certainty that no, he didn't, because had he known, he would never have had the feeling that I'm going to be forgotten when I'm gone.
Yeah.
But isn't that a human trait that we all have? You
It's
and
a
I
human
have that.
trait for good people. There's people out there that are narcissistic and arrogant, that they think the opposite. But
Yes.
that's far that's not there's more good than there is people like that. That's why
Yes. I mean,
the people like that stand out so much, because Elvis Elvis didn't
I
have an ego.
no.
Not
And I mean,
As a rule.
I can identify with that because I have the same problem. I mean, you guys know it. I still don't, and I don't think that I think there are very few people on the face of the planet that really understand their worth in the circles that they move
Mm,
in.
mm.
I sure as hell don't. I sure as hell
I
don't.
question it every day.
And,
More as I get older, I question it more and more.
And does it make me a bad person for not realizing that?
Mm,
No. It's just I do not have the ability until you guys, for example, come to me and say, "Yeah, but Cam, you do this and you do that, and you do this and you do that," and you force my perspective into a different direction, that I'm able to take myself out of the situation and look at myself externally as somebody else, as a separate human
mhm,
being, can I then start to entertain, okay, maybe they have a point here. And then once I understand that, then I can move forward from that. But that's a basic human trait. I don't think everybody absolutely 100% appreciates and realizes their worth in the world. But even more so, um, for somebody like Elvis's stature, I mean, there's a lot of artists out there today that they know they good people and they know they do good things
mhm,
for people. And I mean, another example of somebody like that is Ozzy, for example. Everybody, the world sketched him
mhm,
as a certain type of person, but he was absolutely the complete opposite. uh, and did he realize what a big person he was in his life, what he meant to people outside of his family? No,
uh,
he didn't.
no, that's
And
the point.
I think that's the sad thing about life, is that we only realize our worth and our importance once we've moved on,
Yeah.
once we no longer here, once we no longer part of this whole situation that's called life. Very few people have that ability, and I think even some of the people that think they have that ability, don't really have that ability, because those people that think they do are usually people that are arrogant about it anyway. It's
Yeah.
like you said, it's like you said earlier, it's usually people like us that rather prefer to take the standpoint to say, oh no, I'm not that good, or no, I'm not that important in this person's life, or whatever the case may be. But that's coming from an empath's point of view. And unfortunately, in Elvis's case, he didn't have the people around him
Mhm.
to, I'm sure people told him that, but he was never in a position where he could literally realize that for himself
Yeah,
and
the people
feel that.
around him were the ones that he probably, when they would tell him stuff like that, I'm sure it was like, to him, it's just like, well, you're going to tell me that you work for me.
Yes.
Who in his life do you think would be the only one that it would make an impression on it? Well, it would have been Lisa if she, when she got older.
Yes.
You got I've always wondered what his relationship really was with his father. I don't really think him and his father were that close. But
No.
I think he would have listened, if his father told him that, he probably would have been shocked and thought, okay, well, that's nice. Parker
You
told him
know,
that all the time, according to those letters. But anyway,
something that comes to mind for me personally is actually just dawned on me. It's like when I hear the words of encouragement from you guys, or donations come through for me, or whatever the case may be, and Rick puts me on the spot and says, okay, say something about it. The reason why it's so difficult for me to verbalize what I feel is because in those moments I don't hear the words of, Cam, you're a special part of our lives. Cam, you do this, or Cam, you special because of
yeah,
that, or whatever the case may be. In those moments, I literally feel that. And for me to even acknowledge that to myself
right,
takes a lot, because it's very big for me.
yeah,
It's almost too big for me, because it's in those moments that I realize, you know what? Uh, this isn't these are not just words, or they not just gestures. This is real. This that's happening here. The emotion that you're feeling due to something that's happened, somebody being generous, or somebody being there with an empathetic heart, or giving advice, or whatever the case may be. And I find myself in those emotionally raw times. That's when my inner voice basically is forcing my human body to
mm,
say, okay, now you have to see it,
yeah,
now you have to acknowledge that it's there.
yeah,
And that's something that I'm slowly over time having to learn to do, because I was never given the opportunity growing up to self realize how important I can be to myself and to those around me. And unfortunately, that's in most empaths lives. That's what happens. And I think in Elvis's case, he might have heard it all the time,
yeah,
but outside of his mother, he never
yeah,
felt that. It was never a feeling that he was forced to say to himself, from a spiritual or emotional side to a cognitive side, to say, wow, I'm really worth it. And
you,
this is what I mean to people. So I
yeah,
think that's also what made the loss of his mother for him
yeah,
so traumatic, is
profound, yeah,
because outside of his mother, he always, his mother always made him feel important.
special, yeah.
His mother made him feel special.
I'll
After
tell you
his
one
mother
thing that,
left, he had to hear it, and it never
yeah,
became really a reality with him.
right. I would say the only thing that in his life that would come close to him really feeling that that emotion and of being loved and cared would be his audiences.
Yeah.
The clapping and just you could feel the emotions coming from the fans. It was the way it was. It wasn't so strong when I saw him in Vegas because the feeling, you could feel in the atmosphere, the electricity from him. But when you're in an arena, you could feel it. It's like it goes right through you. And that's why he loved playing. When you get up there and you get a response like that, and those people are showing you their love and appreciation that you're standing up there, that's a lot. But when it comes to the personal aspect, I think it's just his mother. Yeah.
You know why? Yes, I agree with you 100% with what you're saying, and I'm going to explain why. Because I heard something that somebody said a while ago on a YouTube channel. She's a voice coach, right? And she understands music from a scientific point of view, but she said something that was very poignant to me. And she said the following. She said, music is not like poetry. Music talks to the emotion
Uh-huh.
of a human being. And an emotion is not a cognitive thought. An emotion is something that is woven into you.
Yeah.
And I think to that's why music is so powerful
Uh,
to evoke sadness,
any
joy,
every emotion.
sorrow, whatever the case may be, is because that message that comes from music doesn't get filtered by the cognitive thought process. It goes immediately
Yeah.
to the emotional bonding point. And I think to add on to what you said, I think that's the only reason why Elvis felt the way he did on stage, is because he knew that energy that was being shared
Mm,
was not a cognitive thing. It
right.
wasn't a case of, oh, I need to show you adoration, or I need to scream and shout to make you think you're brilliant, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Those were emotions talking to emotions. People were being able, and we still do it today. Thank God music has that capability, because he still communicates that to us
Mm.
today.
It's always there.
He,
It's just, that's what that's how I motivate myself through life. Or if I'm not, everybody knows that I'm home alone most of the time. And music is thank God I got this channel, because I would have probably drifted away from the music and all that, because it just didn't give me anything there. But now, I have the Memphis concert that I used to. If I'm like laying here and I'm just like, I gotta get motivated to go, man, and I stick that thing on, it's over. Next thing you know, an hour later, my room's all clean and all this. It motivates me. And then when I'm not feeling good, or I just want to relax and just chill, maybe a little bluesy or whatever, I'll put on something that's like Elvis is Back, or an album like that that's got a little bit of blues in it. It's got some, Soldier Boy. It's just he's got it all. He's got every emotion you can have. Listening to a song like Rags to Riches, or what was it we listened to the other day? It was just blew us away, you and I. We were like,
uh,
holy shit. It was like the best acapella we had, or close to it. Better than Rags to Riches and all that. And it was just like, and it wasn't a song that he was hitting those high notes. It was just, he sang it just like a soft all the way through, but it gave the power. What was that freaking song?
it
Uh,
was on
I'll
it
find
was
it.
on inside the studio
Yeah,
recently.
yeah. I'm gonna find it right now. I'm gonna go through
I, I
the.
think this
It's
week
gonna,
actually.
it's gonna drive me batty now until I find it. Let's see. Inside the studio when.
And
Um,
I think that's the thing. I think because when he was there, it was emotions talking to emotions. He knew that the people that were there were genuine. And
20
those
days and
emotions,
20 nights. Was that it?
no.
Wrong
It
again.
wasn't it
Lighten it up a little bit. That's the oh wait a minute. Say,
Power of My Love.
Power of My Love, and I don't care if it wasn't. I don't care if the sun don't shine.
No,
Maybe it was Power of My After Loving You. That wasn't so hot
it,
yet.
it, it, it was. I think it was.
We've done so many of them.
It was. I still remember saying to you that the hi hat sounded like rain.
Well, that was
It was
Kentucky Rain today.
Kentucky Rain. Yeah, I
True
think it
Love
was.
Travels on a Gravel Road. Maybe that was it. Anyway,
Yes.
yeah, it was because he sang it so. It was just there was no. It was just like a soft singing to your child and let them go to sleep.
Yes.
20 days and 20 nights. I was wrong and she was right. All alone. And it was just calm all the way through. But boy, that one, Rags to Riches, has got to be the best power song a cappella. Yeah, Tracy. That one just. That one, I lost my giblets on that one.
Another big one was "If I Can Dream." I never heard that
Yeah.
song like
No,
that.
it had all of us in tears, that one.
And if you think about it, what other artist has ever been able to do what he still does? 40, what? We're going 47 years now?
Yeah, you don't hear Michael Jackson. You don't see box sets coming out about him, and you don't see. And he had a longer career than Elvis did because he had it from 5 years old until what was he? What when he died? When he was 45,
50? He was
50.
50.
So
Yeah,
for 45 years, he had a career with the Jackson Five, and that double the career that Elvis had. And his house is his Neverland is just a dump. Though people just, I don't think anybody even takes care of it.
I know.
I can't think of any artist in history that has 40. What is that? This year is 48 years since he
Yeah,
passed.
yeah.
Who? I don't know. Not even John Lennon. Not even the Beatles since they broke up have this kind of reaction from fans.
Yeah, no, it's and that's why I hope wherever he is now that he's able to reconcile and realize that his biggest fear was nothing but fear when he said,
Yeah,
will they even remember me when I'm gone?
yeah. There's a good
Be-
one from Brent. How many? Let me write. Name any artist that has as many YouTube channels devoted to him.
yeah, 100% right.
And
100%
Olga
right.
responds, there isn't.
No.
I mean, it just it's like I don't even do searches for Elvis reactions because when I first got started, I do Elvis reaction. Well, when I opened up YouTube, it was like the whole page was Elvis reactions all the way down the line. Going back to 2 or 3 years. And after a while, I just like, okay, that's enough because if I watched 10, 9 were just terrible reactors. They were just doing it for the click and the. But then you get the ones, that's how I found Brent. I had Brent. That's how I found Michelle. Right off the bat, and there was a couple others that I found that you know were legitimate reactors. And
Well, if it wasn't for Brent and Leon, our paths would never have crossed.
no. If it wasn't for Brent and Leon, between them, Brent and Michelle, she did something different. I really enjoyed her show. I wish she would come back. But anyways, I love to listen to her reviews and all that. But Brent and there was another. Oh, he wasn't a pure Elvis reactor, but I loved his reaction. And his guy's name is Jamal, and he had some great reactions to either the music that I grew up in. And I remember watching him listen to Elvis do American Trilogy. The guy He was just in his early stages because he was standing in a room, looked like it was all pads, looked like he was getting ready to move upstairs in an elevator. It's so funny. But he was doing American Trilogy, and dude, I thought he was going to cry. He was so into it, and I always watched him for the longest time. And
I mean, if memory serves me correctly, Brent, I done a show with you first before I did the show with Leon where we spoke about our favorite song on the Moody Blue album,
yeah,
if I
yeah,
remember
that's
correctly.
the one I called in, and it was
Yes.
you, me, Leon, and Brent.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I
what.
think
And it wasn't long
I
after that I reached out to. So I can't remember how I got a hold of you because
you
I didn't
got
have
you
your email.
yeah you got hold of me because you asked Brent and then Brent gave you
Oh,
my
okay.
email and then you popped me an email. So basically, if it wasn't for that,
Been almost a year now. August,
yeah,
2 more months, it'll be a year. Not
yeah,
even 2 months.
yeah,
It was the end of September.
yeah, that we did the first coffee date. Yeah, but I mean, we did that first uh, discussion on the Moody Blue album. We did
Yeah,
that in. When was I on your show, Brent? It was in the early part of the year, right? February, March. So it must have been around April or May of 2020, 2024 that we did that episode with Leon. So yeah, I mean, you and I basically it's been over a year now.
yeah. And if I hadn't, it's funny thing. You think about what ifs, I always hated what ifs, but
Yeah, do that for me,
if I
Brent,
had
if you
not
don't mind.
fallen down the steps and broken my hip during COVID and wound up in the hospital and to come back and have a therapist, I probably would have never started a YouTube channel. It was my therapist that told me, you really, he saw the guitars and the pictures and all the Elvis stuff. He goes, you an Elvis fan? I felt like saying, I know what makes you think that? And there's fucking books all over Elvis and everything. He says, you ever watch YouTube? I go, no, not unless I want to know how to fix something like in the car or replace this. He says, well, you should check out. There's a lot of channels on there that react to Elvis songs. And I go, okay, so it took me a while to even do it because I just didn't think of it. And I finally got on there, and Brent's was actually the first one I saw. I can't remember the song, but it looked like he was. It's funny. He was sitting at the. It looked like he was sitting at the entranceway to wherever he lived, and I thought, well, this is cool. So he did a reaction, and he had the greatest reactions to it. So I thought, okay, cool. So I did a more search, and I found another one from him. So I watched that, and then I found Jamal. And I thought, okay, so I was watching them and watched some others, and some of them were really bad. So my therapist goes back the next week, a couple of weeks later, and he says, well, did you check it out? I go, yeah. He goes, well, that's what you ought to do. And I looked at him, I go, dude, you want me to react to a song I've heard like 1,000 times in my life? What am I supposed to do? Act like I've never heard it before, And he goes, no, 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 man. He says, you've told me you were a musician, you worked in studios. You ought to approach it from a different way. Analyze the songs and get into it and explain how they're recorded and all that. Okay, so it's like a month later, and I wound up. My first video was on the anniversary of Elvis passing, and that was I think it's 4 years ago this year. Hard to freaking believe, 4 years, man. I can't get over that I've been doing that. Let me see.
Brent, I think that was August 2023.
August 16th, 2021. So 4 years ago, next week, next Sunday, next Saturday, 4 years.
And you want to hear something crazy? I think before when Brent and I were still talking about doing the episode, I think just after the recording or while we were doing the recording, Brent said something crazy to me in the effect of, "You should really think about doing your own YouTube channel. You got some good viewpoints." And I laughed. I still said to Brent that day, I said, are you crazy? I'm way too timid to do that kind of thing." And here we are, a year and a bit later.
Yeah, here. Um, Yeah, Brent says I remember that. At the beginning of my run, I said I'm just trying to seek a direction from my channel. So now I think it's safe to say you found it. Yeah. All right. You know what? It's been almost 3 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes. It's been an awesome discussion. Great people, great, all of you. I hope this kind of gives you some kind of direction about the book, if you're going to get it or not. I'm sure it'll be on the bargain bin before long. Most books are anymore these days. I think I paid $12 for the Kindle and $12 or $13 for the audiobook.
This out of left field. Sorry, I won't be late tomorrow, guys. I'll be on time tomorrow. I promise. Oh hell, you still got the damn fly. I would have killed. Well, they say if you swallow it fast enough, you won't know. You won't know the difference. But that's not a theory I'm going to test. Because with my luck, it will get stuck in a tooth or something.
You didn't hear it swallow? You didn't hear me swallow it?
Yeah. Jeez, it sounds like.
Oh, what a way to end the show. we got to get a little bit of laughter. Here's Elvis.
All that's left between us are the memories we share and the times we thought we'd share.
The times we thought we'd shit. All right. One last thing. I got a dirty feeling. All right. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last chapter from Careless Love, and it's the chapter Timing Can't Be Any Better. Well, the timing works out to be the same week as Elvis, the anniversary of Elvis's passing, and it covers the passing of Elvis, that last chapter. So it'll be a good discussion, and then we're done. We're done with those two books of Guralnick. We'll probably have a couple more of those discussions, but remember, we all voted, and our next book is. Get up to here. How do I get up there? Oh, there it is. Me and Elvis by Charlie Hodge. Nice, be a nice positive book. I'll scan the pages and we'll talk about it. And it's only 200 pages, so we'll be through that. We could probably get this done in a day. So, guys,
with your speed reading, you'll read that in the tea time.
Yeah, I'll read it pretty quick. Yeah. Yeah, I learned speed reading when I was in high school.
That's always a skill I wish I had.
Yeah, the lady next door, she had a course. She used to teach it, and so I used to go over there, and she would teach me how to do it. And it's actually, you'd be surprised really how easy it is. But you got to be a person that's focused. You got to take out the rest of the world, and you have to use your fingers. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't believe it. I go through those pages, and I was surprised at how much I retained. So some books books like that I do it on. The Guralnick book I wouldn't be able to do it on it because it's just too detailed. Anyway, you guys, thank you. It's Elvis week. We're gonna be going. I'm gonna be going live, and we'll have a chat, and we'll probably be back and forth in the chat. But we're gonna go live on the night of the vigil, 1 week from yesterday. So it'll be Friday night, the candlelight vigil, and they got a camera on there. So I thought what we do is I just throw the camera up because it's only I don't know what time it gets dark in Memphis, but do that. And we'll probably do it till. I'll probably do it till 9 or 10. It's up to Cam, but I don't. I'm just gonna. It's not gonna really be any kind of chat, but I don't want. It's gonna be like 4 o'clock in the morning for him, and plus we got the other show, so it's gonna be up to you. But I don't want to. We need to start focusing on getting some rest in between, and we pretty much did this week. So, anyway, that's it. Elvis week. Keep an eye out for notifications and some stuff, and hopefully we'll see y'all tomorrow. 1:00 Eastern Standard Time. The coffee date with Elvis fans.
And Olga, remember your press passes.
Yeah, those press passes. I look at those. I go, I wonder how good of a job I thought they came out pretty good. The holders and all that. So that might get her some places. I don't know. It's up to her whether she wants to use them or not. But that'd be cool.
Oh no, knowing Olga, she's going to make sure they there.
Yeah,
look at him, look at him, look. Do you know who I am?
Said they are in her car now. Well, I did a large one and a small one, and I think I did 2 of each. I'm not for sure, but the large one she could do either way, but the small one. But I figured she could do one and hang in her car when she leaves. Maybe she gets some free parking, and then and then the other one, maybe it'll get her into place. You never know, Hey, Elvis-A-Z channel. Can you give me a 5-minute interview? Oh, wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh.
All right, guys. Well, I'll give you notification if anything pops up. And Olga pops in. It's going to be fun. This is going to be a fun week. So the normal routines will probably change a little bit because next Saturday is the anniversary. So we'll do some broadcasts, but we probably won't do inside the studio and all that next week because I'll have to look at the events that day. We might do inside the studio, but maybe the live chats we won't do. I don't know.
Here's a crazy thought. Hey, Olga, what you gonna do if you run into Larry Geller at Graceland?
Oh, she says she may put the large one at the meditation garden. That's cool. Oh, you know what I forgot to do?
Yeah.
I was gonna make some little business cards so she could.
Yeah.
I'll call them. Shit, she's going there Monday. It's gonna be too late. I meant to get like 50 of them so she could hand out, lay them at places. Check out the channel. Oh well. I'll check it out. Anyways, y'all have a great day. This is the short version of the long goodbye.
Thank you, guys, as usual.
All right, TTB, have a great week. Thanks for calling in, Olga. Always
have a safe trip.
Conversation, yeah, and drive safely, please. And then
and make sure you got that Elvis cranked up on the car stereo.
I left my home in Detroit, Michigan. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye. Okay, good one. I don't even have to play it, do I?
No.